What's up, everybody? This is Battlefield Joe 97 here. You see the background of this video, you see me wearing this hat, and you see the water. So it's time for some corporate chilling time for the big N. And that, of course, is talking about the Nintendo Switch, my impressions of the system, and a first of video review of the system over the course of its lifespan, just like how I did with the Wii U, which eventually, by the 5th year of the Wii U's launch, later this year, I'm definitely going to make a final redux review of the system itself, which I am going to be talking about the Wii U in certain bits in comparison to Nintendo's Switch. So let's get this out of the way. The one thing that I absolutely enjoy the most about the Switch, even though it's technically, well, first and foremost by Nintendo's quotes, a home console, you could treat this as a portable system, and for the most part, ever since I got the system on March 3rd during the midnight launch party, or the midnight launch line in Nintendo New York, I've been using this as a portable system. I've been playing Breath of the Wild on this thing. I've been playing 1-2-Switch a lot, mainly because of the coworkers, and playing Quick Draw, because that's fucking really fun once you know how to do this kind of shit and maybe bet some things. Super Bomberman R from Konami. Kind of a mediocre kind of game, but overall, for Bomberman's return, it's not really that bad. And of course, in the background, Lego City Undercover. Needed another open world game next to Breath of the Wild to be able to play anywhere, wherever I go, including the bathroom. But yeah, it really is cool to just be able to take the system with you, which of course, if I take out the controller's right here, this is the system itself. Very sleek, very compact compared to the Wii U console, which was kind of a beefier version of the original Wii system. Here, it's a bona fide tablet. You can use a touchscreen as multi-layer to go out of it, compared to the Wii U gamepad, where it was like only a single touch interface, which was kind of outdated to begin with. But overall, you could use this as a control scheme as well for like maybe one certain game from the eShop, kind of a rhythm game. I don't have it here, but it is an example of you can use this just the system alone. But what's really interesting is that the controllers for the system are actually these two controllers, Joy-Con L and Joy-Con R. Now, these things are kind of like, if I were to make an example, two Wii remotes, and one of them can be used as the nunchuck, and the other one can be used as the Wii remote, but then at the exact same time, they're kind of still Wii remotes, in a way. It's weird unless you actually experience certain games and how you use them, or just basically being able to play them. Like, the ways that you can interact with the system and being able to use multiple control schemes right out the bat is something even more enticing for the system compared to the Wii U gamepad, where you were only limited to just the gamepad, and every other accessory you either had to have with you, like the Wii remotes, Wii Remote Plus, the Wii Classic Controller Pro, for certain Wii titles, or even certain Wii U games that utilize that control scheme. Which, there's another thing that I like about the Switch, is not dependent on the system, because the system you can keep with you anywhere you go, and it's not a hassle to have the fucking wires for the console and the controller and stuff like that, which I don't know how the hell anybody was able to take out the Wii U console and the Wii U gamepad and all those chargers that kind of have wear and tear to them, especially the charger for the Wii U, which that shit did not last for like 5 years. That thing died on me until I had to buy another charger for this fucking monstrosity. But yeah, with the Switch, it's compact, and even with the AC adapter being a brick instead of just a regular cord, at least it's a lot more power. It can recharge the system, which of course is a negative for the Switch itself. The battery life, depending on the software that you use for the system, it's not going to last for like maybe, what, 5 or 6 hours, or maybe even 4 if you're continuously playing it and then it gets a little bit hot in the back. But to be honest, with the ways that you can charge the system through USB 2.0 or 3.0, whatever USB-O is, or even the AC adapter, which is a brick, and can charge the system really quick, it's a negative, but at the exact same time, it's not a big negative to have if you're close to a computer, a laptop, or at least close to an outlet, which of course I've mainly been playing this system as a portable system at my workplace, and I'm close to an outlet and even have a laptop, so I'm pretty good of being able to use this anywhere I go. Now, to come back to the whole control schemes, of course, you can just play the game with just Joy-Con L and Joy-Con R, like it's a wireless Wii remote nunchuck kind of thing, but not restricted to wires, which is pretty weird at first, but you get used to it eventually. Which is going to be really cool to be able to play ARMS with just going all over the place. That'd be really swell. But what's really cool, you can emulate it like how the Wii U gamepad is, with the controller on the left and the controller on the right, making a slimmer version of the Wii U gamepad. Which, get sound effect. And there, you can use this as another control scheme, another method of being able to play any game you want. Like, let's say, Zelda, right here. You can see right here carefully. Yeah, that's pretty fucking cool. Be able to play this anywhere you want, at home and anywhere. It's pretty fucking cool, and it's pretty ingenious to be able to play open world games with not much of a hassle to go for it. But also, another control method that you can use is the Joy-Con grip. So let's say, for example, you don't want to really use this as a slim Wii U gamepad, or being able to use Joy-Con L and Joy-Con R separately wirelessly. You could just take it out from the system, have the stand of the system, which kind of is faulty at best, which I don't really use it too much. I use the stand from the first party carrying case that Nintendo provides, along with a screen protector, which you can see right here, a stand for the system. But of course, you could then use the Joy-Con grip, which I don't know why the hell, when they bundled this with the Switch, they didn't bundle the Joy-Con grip that has a charger over here. You have to buy that separately, which I think that's kind of BS, but overall, it's easy to charge the Joy-Cons through multiple ways, either buying the charging station for it, which, or you can have it next to the system, like attached to the system, charges with the AC adapter or USB, and it charges along with it, which is very convenient. You have multiple ways of being able to charge it, depending on what kind of way you want to do it. But anyhow, your third option of being able to play games right off the bat, connected, and you have a mini controller, which, to be honest, I thought it was going to be pretty cramped, which is why when I was in the midnight launch event, I bought the not the Wii U, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which of course is $70 to $80, but considering how this thing is fucking beefy and probably has a lot more tech to it because of the gyro and everything, you could probably knock someone out and get their money. I'm just being honest for that. But to be quite frank, this method of playing games isn't really that bad. It's my preferred method of actually playing through Breath of the Wild, and not just, using the system as like a slim version of the Wii U gamepad. Just have the stand from the carrying case, position the system itself, and just being able to play it. And that's a pretty cool thing. So, right off the bat, you have 3 control options to be able to go through it, depending on the software that utilizes it. Or a 4th control option. You take out the Joy-Cons, and let's say you're playing Sonic Mania or any other platformer. You can take either Joy-Con, go like this, like it's a Wii remote on its side, and over here you see the bumpers, which is the left and the R bumper, and you can use it to play through games, which is pretty convenient. So it's a jack-of-all-trades kind of system that actually does work to its advantage, unlike with the Wii U, where even though it's sort of a jack-of-all-trades system from the way you're able to have multiple controllers, you had to buy those multiple controllers in order to have the multiple options for it. Here, you have like 3 to 4 control options right out the bat. A lot of variety, and yeah, it's pretty freaking cool. But anyhow, going from the negatives of the system itself, and this is something that I cannot ignore, being able to play the game at home through the dock, which, let me get rid of this condom right there, is the Nintendo Switch dock, which me and everybody else thought that this thing was going to increase the horsepower of certain games, because Nintendo did say first and foremost it's a home console. So you would think that Nintendo would actually have something to maybe be on par with the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, at least in terms of the processing power, because even though you can treat this as a portable system, at least if you're playing the game at home, you would like to have maybe improved frame rate, improved resolution, etc. But that's not really the case when it comes to the dock, because literally, this thing is just an outputter. The system is this tiny little tablet, and this thing over here is just an outputter for the picture from here to the TV that you have through HDMI. And there's not really much tech for this thing. Take out from the back, and over here is the entirety of the operation for this thing. And I don't know if it's just me, maybe you have this in your collection, but for some weird reason, the smell of the dock kind of reminds me of the cheap plastic that 4Kids Entertainment did in the packaging for the Yu-Gi-Oh! DVDs. Like, I may be fucking crazy to say that kind of shit, but the smell of the Switch feels like cheap plastic, which then goes into another negative, a big negative in my opinion, that kind of deters me of actually using it as a home console. This thing, it's a convoluted, conflicting kind of thing, but in my opinion, this thing scratched my screen. Now granted, it's not a big scratch like, say, Blunty had on his system, but for maybe like once or twice before I eventually bought these things on eBay, these custom Switch dock socks, say that as many times, dock sock, or whatever, but anyhow, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but there's like a little line over here that the screen protector did protect from the long scratch, but there's a tiny little dent when you get rid of that screen protector that I put on the system, which to me is inexcusable. That, along with the cheap glass that Nintendo operated for this system, is inexcusable. The fact that they didn't put any soft cushion inside the dock, especially for, at least in my opinion, how cheap the plastic smells, which reminds me of fucking old Yu-Gi-Oh! DVDs, it doesn't really put much confidence for me for this kind of thing. Which, even though I already have custom dock socks, which if you want, I could make a link to a certain page on eBay that makes these custom dock socks, which are pretty freaking cool. Have one for Donkey Kong. I love DK, so I needed to have that in the collection. But yeah, it does suck that somehow something that came with the system could potentially scratch your thing. Now, of course, people will say that, oh, well, you didn't put the screen protector on. I did put the screen protector on when I immediately got the system, right? I bought the carrying case with the system and various other items in Nintendo's own New York store, so that wasn't the issue. The issue, in my opinion, is somehow they went with this fucking cheap plastic to then be able to justify it, but yeah, whatever. At least in my opinion, I've used this thing as a portable system more than a home console, so not really that much of an issue in that certain regards, but I still needed to point that out because of how cheap this damn thing is. It doesn't really output any resolution or improve frame rates. It just, this thing is like a waste, a piece of shit. It's a piece of garbage, but at least this thing makes it look good and presentable, which I'm surprised Nintendo hasn't capitalized on this yet for the thing. But anyhow, in terms of the games and the packaging, I think at least for Nintendo's strategy from releasing the system in March, they're having this kind of strategy of being able to release their own games, either ports or brand new games, for at least 1 to 2 months in a time period to give each game a break, and then certain indie titles and maybe the few AAA games from these AAA publishers that hopefully they'll stick to, which, by the way, Square Enix is fully dedicated for the system itself, which is going to be really swell at maybe Final Fantasy 15, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, or even the Kingdom Hearts games actually having Switch version. That would be freaking cool, being able to play Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep on the Switch, which, oh, transition. We're going into the casing of the Switch itself, which of course many people, let's take this Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild case for instance, remind them of UMD casing of PSP titles, which, my copy of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep on the PSP, which, shit, my fucking copy of Zelda fell off, which of course if you were to make a comparison, the UMD cases are a little bit taller than the Switch casing, and a bit more beefy than the Switch ones. Which, if you can focus clearly on the camera, which you can tell in a quick glance, UMD cases are much bigger, and they're a little bit taller than the Switch casing. And if we were to make a comparison on Nintendo's side, the original GameCube casing of GameCube games in Japan with Wind Waker, the Japanese copy that I bought, along with the Wii U and the Switch versions in Video Games New York. Which, fuck, my goddamn grip for the Zelda casing is like, fuck. But yeah, if you were to compare, the size and the width is something else, you know, just for, you know, trivia's sake. But another thing that I do have an issue with is, or maybe a personal issue, not like a big issue, is that there's really no manuals. The only ones that I ever heard of that there's manuals for Switch games is the Binding of Isaac, which I couldn't even find a copy of. There's no manual. The manual is like a digital manual that you can access through the home menu of the Switch, but there's no manual. You're literally just buying a fucking cute little tiny box with the cartridges, which, that's another big thing when it comes to the Switch itself. They forgo the use of DVDs, or at least Blu-ray-like discs, for cartridges, because of course, since this is a hybrid home console, and being able to use it as a portable system, you can't really have like mini DVDs, because that was the main issue that PSP had, that eventually Sony realized, and they went with the same kind of method for flash cards, which, of course, let me get a comparison for the cartridges of the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation Vita. So let's take, for instance, this copy of Lego City Undercover on the Switch. This is what it looks like. Switch cartridges being like flash cards, which, of course, fun trivia, they'll lick the shit out of it. They put some fucking chemicals in that makes your tongue like fucking blah. Which, of course, I did. It wasn't pretty. But, shit. I don't have the cartridge for this thing. Let's take another example. Let's say this copy of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection on the Vita. Let's look at the size of that cartridge compared to a Switch cartridge, just for, you know, fun trivia's sake. Now, Switch cartridge. Then we got the Vita cartridge right here. You know, for fun's sakes, you know. And with the carrying case, the first party carrying case that I got, you can actually put multiple cartridges so you can take them anywhere you go, which is really convenient to have, and kind of defeats the purpose of, you know, buying digital games, and which is also a kind of a major thing that may if off people. It's just like with the Wii U. Nintendo doesn't really give out 100 gigabytes for the system itself. I think the system has like, what, 24 or 30 gigabytes, which isn't that much of a big issue unless you buy games digitally, which that can be a big issue unless you buy micro SD cards. But, you know, unlike with the Vita, where you had to buy proprietary Sony memory cards in order to be able to have them, you can just use regular micro SD cards. Though there are recommend micro SD cards from Nintendo, you can get any one of them for pretty cheap and much bigger storage space than what you would get from the Vita. So it's a kind of a hurdle if you buy digital games, but for me, the only digital games that I have are just basically tiny little old indie games or retro games like from Neo Geo, which of course, really fucking cool to have King of Fighters 98 and Waka Waka 7. Anywhere you go, at home or at work, it's fucking swell. But anyhow, I've been deluding myself for God knows how many like minutes at this point. Overall, first impressions, the first month and a few days of utilizing the system, mostly as a portable console, I actually enjoy it. I think the hype is pretty good, and hopefully Nintendo continues this for at least the next year or two, which I'm definitely going to revisit the Switch for a second video review. And of course, with the Wii U console itself, I'm going to have a final Redux review of this thing later on in the year to mark the 5th anniversary for Nintendo's recent failure in their company history. And of course, the next video after this one is going to be my very big Gaming Pickups Plus video combining the months of February and March. That's probably going to be 20 minutes or at least half an hour, so that's going to take a lot of memory on this video recorder that I'm doing right now for these videos. But anyhow, what are your thoughts on the Nintendo Switch? Do you have the system on you? How many hours have you put in Breath of the Wild? Do you think it's an absolute masterpiece, like I do right now? Which, of course, gotta represent Zelda, you know? I've got to represent the Switch as well. What are your thoughts on the other consoles, the other systems, etc.? Put it in the comment section below. Like, favorite, subscribe. This is Battlefield Joe 97. Catch you guys later.